Everybody. I'm Paul Van Meter. I'm one of the founders of Addion Systems, and we develop ProShop. You don't want you to have to look at me the whole time, so I'm going to turn this off, and then we're going to focus on the video, the rest of the presentation. So anyway, just wanted to say hi. Alrighty. So Texas, very good, John. All right. So first, before we get started, I wanted to just describe a little bit what ProShop is. Many of you probably know, and then set the stage for what the day in the life of a company is like using ProShop, and a little bit of a history. And then we're going to talk about the summary of our modules, some key features, functionality, talk about some integrations, a few client results working with us, and then some Q&A at the end. So I tend to run long, which means the Q&A gets a little compressed at the end, but hopefully I'll do better this time. So a day in the life of a company using ProShop. First of all, there's no paper. There is not a process within ProShop that requires printing a piece of paper. All employees are using ProShop all day on various tablets, computers, out at their machines or at their desks, entering and accessing the information they need to do their jobs. Our customers tell us it is absolutely the backbone of their companies. And tribal knowledge is essentially eliminated because it's all within ProShop, where it's easy to access and easy to update. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be working on. There's no one running around looking for lost job travelers. And our clients typically look very calm environment. And employees and managers are dialed in, focused on throughput and profit. So it's been really amazing for us to see the before and after for our customers, and of course it's even more amazing for them. And they've told us that without ProShop, their days would indeed be very long. So just a little bit there. Let's switch over to my presentation, and we will talk a little bit about history and just sort of where ProShop came from. So my partners and I started a company called ProCNC, which is a job shop, machine shop in 1997, right out of college. We actually designed and built race cars in college, which was about the most fun thing I could imagine. On the left-hand side, you can see one of the cars that we built, and on the right, that is our first little shop, little 2,000 square foot shop before we even moved anything into it. It was, the company was funded by a second mortgage from the guy on the right-hand side there, and enough to buy a single machine and pay a few months of rent and a few other things left over. So we started knocking on doors in 1997, really not knowing anything about the business besides that we loved machining, which we did in college. And we eventually, grew and developed into a company that did a lot of complex assembly work, engineering. And as we grew, in about the year 2000, we were still using Excel and QuickBooks to kind of run our company. And this is an example of one of the Excel worksheets. It was pretty fancy. We had a lot of macros going on, but it just was not going to scale with us, so that was clear. So we started looking out in the market for different software products that we could use to run our company with, got demos, and underwhelmed is the best way we can describe it. We just didn't like anything that we saw. So we decided to hire a software developer and just build something for ourselves, just that we could use. So we started developing ProShop in the year 2000, and this is kind of what it looked like back then. It was pretty funny, kind of that old 90s look. But we started building just the basics, estimating and parts and work orders, and it really kind of grew from there. And it helped us grow as well as a company. We grew very fast in some years at 100%, with a few of the little blips in 2001 and 2008. But nonetheless, had a great time at it. Eventually got ISO and AS9100 certified. And we really credit having ProShop as a backbone of our company to help us keep anything manageable as we were on that growth curve. In the year 2008, our biggest machine shop customer, a company called South Aero Marine, came to us and asked us if we would sell them ProShop. They had seen it many times. Rich, the guy in this little video here, actually had come and worked for us on Fridays for several months and he took it back to his managers and his owners at the company and said, "You've got to see this system." So they approached us, insistent that we sell it to them. We said no for a while, but they were our biggest customer. Customers are always right, so we eventually said yes. And the results that they got just blew us all away. The reduction in their overhead, they were able to free up staff that they didn't need in those roles anymore. They could do more value-added work. They dramatically reduced their late orders. Their planning throughput went through the roof, and they had an incredible ROI in that first year, just in labor savings alone, not to mention all sorts of other things. So that really opened our eyes to the possibilities of what we could do with ProShop, and we saw an opportunity. So we made plans to sell ProCNC. It took a little while after the economy tanked and all that, but eventually we sold it in 2014. At that time, we had about 75 employees, more than 25 machines, and we're doing about 11 million in revenue. And you can see from some of the graphics here, we submitted ourselves and got awarded many times for fastest growing company, best companies to work for, and some other awards. Really enjoyed that company and do miss it. Of course, they're still a customer of ours, so nice to be able to go see those guys every so often. All right, we're going to switch over and kind of do a little bit of a live demo and talk about some of the features and functionality in ProShop, and then we'll dig into some of the other items on the agenda. So let me switch over to my screen over here. All right, that should be coming through, I think. All right, so let's see. So ProShop, we're going to kind of talk about our modules a little bit. So as you can see, ProShop obviously is a web-based system. I'm just using a web browser here today, and I am logged in. You can see my name is in the upper right-hand corner here, and everything I'm going to do is going to be on this browser. So we can deliver ProShop two ways. We can deliver it over the cloud, which many customers choose to do. It just makes their IT side of things just considerably simpler and easier. But we do have some customers that also do an on-premise installation. So ProShop is running on a web server on inside their company, on their own servers, and then everyone in the company just accesses it through a web browser still, even though it's installed locally. There's no software to install on the actual computers or tablets or places where they're actually accessing ProShop. So just to give you a little bit of the layout of this page here, so this is kind of, the button will get me back to my home screen. I have a few other things under here. Some employees will not see these things. Most of them won't actually, system config and status. But you can access the help system. We can go to our all of our company metrics and everything here. This modules menu has all the modules accessed within ProShop, kind of organized into groups. So we have our sales group, where we have our estimating and quoting, customer POs or sales orders, they're often called, invoices. ProShop, I'll take a moment to pause here. So ProShop does do a lot of accounting functions. We do very thorough and accurate job costing. We do WIP and inventory calculations. All the purchasing is done through ProShop. We create invoices, we create vendor bills, but we still do rely on an integration between another accounting system for some of the GL functions and financial statements. So we have two integrations I'll talk about early already. And so moving on from there, parts and work orders, certainly a core part of the system. One of the things that really differentiates ProShop is how we do our parts and what kind of information we can store in our parts to really kind of eliminate that tribal knowledge that we talked about. These are the foundation of what become our job travelers ultimately for the work orders, with all the work instructions, inspection plans, and everything like that. In our contacts module, we can keep track of all of our customers and vendors, of course. We have a system for recording customer satisfaction surveys, so you can keep those as your isometrics. In our vendor PO module, we have, of course, the ability to create those bills I talked about, but issue orders off of jobs and keep all the job costing accurate and tied into jobs. We have a really neat purchasing dashboard, which I will show you a little bit later. Packing slips, kind of unexciting. Cutting tools, the tool module. allows us to keep track. This is specifically usually used just for machining companies, but machine shops and companies that do machining, but the ability to completely organize the cutting tool library and not only keep it organized, but forecast the tools that are needed for jobs, make sure purchasing is in the loop on when those tools are needed, and that really can help to eliminate downtime when you have a machine and a job that wants to run, but you can't because you don't have the right tool. There's really nothing worse than that in a shop, to have an expensive, high-value asset sitting idle because you're missing a $20 tap or an end mill. Our COTS module is where we keep track and manage all of the inventory for purchase items. COTS stands for commercial off the shelf. So if it's not custom made to your specifications, if it's just something you just buy from a catalog or online, then you'd be managing it in the COTS module. And those items, of course, can be on the bill of materials for parts and work orders and things like that. The work cells area, that's where we can access and see our schedule. We won't touch on formats today, but the work cells really are the schedulable resources that we use on the schedule. We also tie in our tools into our work cells for those companies, for those work cells that are machining centers. And that's one of the ways we can keep track of all those tools, where they are in the company at any time. Our equipment module is basically a fully functional CMMS system. So maintenance and facility maintenance, equipment calibration. So we'll definitely touch on that a little bit later. Fixtures, we can keep track of and manage all the fixtures that are used for all of our parts and work orders, where they're stored, how frequently we use them, what jobs they're needed on, and we even have an archiving system. As your fixtures kind of age out, you can move them into archived areas and eventually recycle them. And then these last little sections down here really are the foundation of our quality management system, or the QMS portion of ProShop. We, of course, have a quality manual, quality procedures, and tasks. Tasks are sort of lower level business process instructions, sort of the step below procedures. Those are all tied in with our training module, so you can specify training for every role in the company and the various procedures and tasks that you might need to train people on. We have audits. Our standards module is where you can build the actual standards that you're going to be certified to, whether it's ISO 9000 or 1345 or AS9100 or API. You can build those standards, and those connect really intimately in with all the other modules, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. The quality records portion is where we keep track of things like our documents and our RMAs, NCRs, corrective actions, risk and opportunity. And then we have our users module, where we can specify all the employees in the company, their company positions, what training they have, what roles they're in, the responsibilities, a whole bunch of things related to this. And then we also have a messaging system that's sort of tied in with that as well. And if we look over here on the upper right-hand side of my screen, I can see I have some new messages because my little envelope is black. I can write new messages by clicking this icon right here. And then just sort of to round out the menu here, underneath my name, this is where I would do clock punches, which is also where I would initiate time tracking on jobs. And then I have a few other things where I can manage my preferences. And we won't touch too much on carts, but we have a whole shopping cart system in ProShop for doing all sorts of functions, from purchasing to managing employees and jobs and other things, but we won't touch too much on that. All right, well, let's look at a little bit of some specifics on a few of our modules. We can't get too deep today with the limited time that we have, but certainly enough to give you a taste of how ProShop works. So we're going to start. So before I guess we move into that, what I'm seeing here on my screen is a customized view of what I have set up. I have shortcuts here on the left-hand side of the modules that I use most frequently. So being someone in sort of the office, estimating side of things, maybe, I have my contacts, customer POs, estimates, parts, vendor POs, tools, and work orders. And the things I'm seeing here are the most recent records that I personally have looked at myself. So if I open up this little drop-down menu, this is the record I looked at most recently, and then I can see the ones beyond that. So I can just quickly click go to jump right into those modules. Um, and, uh, and then in the center part here, these are all collapsible sort of menus that I can open up to look at specific things. So if I wanted to look at, for example, all the jobs that I am a project manager for, here's a summary of all those jobs. So I can see the status of them, when they're due, whether whether they're complete, whether they're still in programming. Over on the right-hand side here, I can also see what we call my purchasing status icons. This shows me the status of all the items that might need to be purchased for these various jobs, from raw materials, cutting tools, BOM items, and outside processes. The color of these icons will indicate the status, whether they're ordered yet, whether they've been received or released, and whether they're ready to go. So as a project manager or as someone on the shop floor, I can easily see, and these icons are viewable in lots of different places in ProShop. So I can just see the status of that job, that, hey, the material is here. We can go ahead and start this job if we need to, just without even, clicking into it, just seeing the color of those icons right there. I have a few other items here. Things that are ready for me to work on immediately would be in my queued work area. So I could see, again, those jobs, things that are available, purchasing status icons, and I can work from this list just from the top down. All right, let's jump into and start looking at some of the modules. We're going to come right over here and start looking at estimating first, because that's typically the first part of the process. There's 3 different ways you can create estimates. You can make them from scratch. We have a really neat template system that you can organize all your different estimating templates in different groups, and then spawn those off to make new ones as you need to. And then the third way, you can always go up and you can copy an estimate. If you have something that's similar and you want to use it, you can leverage that just by copying it. So let's talk about the layout here of an estimate. At the top, we have some basic information about the actual part itself, what the part number is, the drawing revision, who the customer is, the contact people, specific notes or details about that. We can have related estimates if we have other related parts. We can see what the material is for this job, any outside processes. I can see if there's a bill of materials. I'll have that listed right here under my BOM. And then I also have a few icons. This little history icon here, this will show me a history of all the time tracking that has ever been done on this part. So this is actually a part that we have made before, which is why we have that icon. If this was a brand new estimate we've never made before, I wouldn't have any history. But if it's something I've made and I might want to be able to review that history if I'm re-estimating or re-quoting this job to a customer, I have the ability to look at that history for both labor and all the purchases I've ever made for raw material or outside processes or other things like that. Similar to that, at the top, I have links to a profitability summary of those jobs. So if I click on this one, for example, I can see a history of all the times we've ever run this job in the past, summaries of how much time we spent in various activities such as programming and setup and running, how much we spent out of pocket for various items, and then some calculations for hourly rate and scrap rate that we may have had on those jobs. Just below that upper section, we have an area where we have the routing table. So this defines, of course, the sort of the workflow of this part number. We can see what machines those are going to be used on. So here we go with a single, there's a Haas here that's going to be in the first milling operation. I can have a bunch of times associated with those, different numbers for setup time, non-reoccurring setup time, which we think is an important element, and many systems do not factor in non-reoccurring setup time, which is critical for keeping schedules accurate and accuracy for the shop targets that people are shooting for. And of course, we have the option of quoting a separate NRE charge to our customer when we go to make a quote out of this. So lots of other time buckets for inspection and cycle and run times, that type of thing. Down below that area, this is where I can define all the quantities we're quoting and what we're going to be spending on material and outside process, anything we're going to spend money on. Down at the bottom, I have some terms and conditions that will migrate onto the quote page. And then on the far right-hand side, I can see a history of all the quotes that we've sent to our customer for this. If I look at this one, that's the one that's at the top of the list. That's the most recent one I've sent. And I can actually turn this directly into a customer order if they decide to order this from us. If they send us a PO, I can launch a customer order directly from here, and it'll propagate all information from that order into the customer order. Let me jump back, and I'm going to click over from our estimate for this part over into the part module. So the estimate is basically an internal document that is used to define what we think is going to happen if we won this work. And the part record is what actually is going to happen when we win this work. And we differentiate the two because you always want to have an idea of what the plan was and what it currently is now. And the part is where we keep the very latest configuration, the latest drawing revisions, which we can see by clicking this link right up here. It just can pop open and show me, still coming on your screen. There we go. We can see what the drawing looks like. There we go with the bubble tagging even. So that's always available. We can have all the individual workflows and even the ability to have different routing methods. ProShop has the ability to support multiple routing methods per part number. So if you have different ways you could make something, whether you make it in-house, whether you outsource it to another vendor, maybe you have different manufacturing workflows internally, your preference would be to run it on a 5-axis mill or a horizontal mill in fewer setups. But if that machine isn't available, then you need to run it on a vertical mill in multiple setups. You can have those routings be specified. Another common method is you're building to order or you're building to stock and you're putting it into inventory. And then you might pull parts from inventory and sell them later. So if you're on a blanket contract with a customer and you need to maintain a stock level, you can always make sure that we have lots of tools for making sure you stay on top of that, but you can build those build to stock orders, build to inventory, and then as the customer issues releases, you can issue releases out of inventory. So lots of different ways to use those. One of the neat things about our operations is if we dig inside of our operations, and if we click into an operation like this, we have a series of what we call operational components. And we can expand and contract all of these little panels. So for example, this operation is a vice operation. I even have a little description of what those vices look like. I can open up what we call our sequence detail. This one's pretty basic. It's just a couple of tools. Let's actually jump over to a descriptive operation. I know operation 60 here has a little bit more going on to it. In this case, our work holding is feeding into our work holding module. So this is actually telling me where fixture number 21 is, where it's stored, what it looks like, what jobs it's used on. Here's a more descriptive set of tools. So this is feeding into our cutting tool module. Again, this would specifically be for a machining operation. You can add or remove these components. So if we're not doing machining, we could just remove this whole item called sequence detail and remove it off the list. But we can see which tools are going to be used on this job, what kind of out of extension length they need, what kind of holder they're in, what kind of tool life we should be expecting out of those. That's used to forecast the demand for how many tools we'll need for these jobs. If we just open up one of these tools here in another tab, you can see a summary of kind of what this tool module looks like. So I'm now in my tool module for this particular end mill here. There's a photo of it. Here's details on the left-hand side of all the cutting parameters that our programmers might need to know. On the right-hand side, I can see which vendors we have and brands that we have approved, their costs and lead times for those things. And I can also see the inventory status and then forecasts of what we need for upcoming jobs, how many we currently have on order that haven't been received yet to be back in inventory, and even quantity in use. So if I click on this little link, it is going to show me, I can expand this out, a list of all the machines currently out in my shop that actually have this tool in their tool changers or tool carousels right now. So I can see this is a very active tool. We use it on a lot of different jobs and machines. And then these tools can also be a part of our rotating tool assembly module. So here's an example of this tool assembly with a specific holder, the extension length with a tolerance. ProShop can even integrate in with offline tool presetters to help manage all your presetting functions, and will warn you, for example, if this tool isn't assembled properly and doesn't have the right offset length range. All right, let's jump back to our part here. And then doing inspection inside of ProShop is a really essential function. So you can actually import in your inspection plans. I'll talk a little bit later about one of the integrations we have, but you can use a CSV import to import in an inspection plan, define what the tolerances are, which features you're going to check as a first article, or which ones you're going to check in process as you're running production, and what frequency you want to check those on. We can add photos to any one of these steps to document how we do the inspection if it's a little bit tricky. And then we have what we call our written description and run description. Those are basically setup information for how this job is to be set up. It typically starts out with just some text from the programmer, maybe a screen capture out of the CAM system. Not uncommon to see videos put in here of a screen simulation of what that machining process will look like. And if this isn't a machining operation, of course, you can document a setup of any kind, whether it's an assembly operation, whether it's welding, really anything at all, you can do that. I'm going to jump over to this other tab that I have. Once a job has been run a few times, we often will see companies actually putting photos in of the actual setups. So, they say a photo is worth 1,000 words, so we can just throw these in here. And so people out on the shop floor will have a much easier time understanding and seeing exactly what it is they're supposed to be doing. And of course, we empower those people as well to document their experience and put in, information that can help others in the future. And this is one of the most essential ways that we try to eliminate tribal knowledge. Every company faces it, particularly with the sort of labor shortage these days. It's hard to find skilled people. And our customers find that if they can have more experienced people documenting the setups really thoroughly, then they can have success with less experienced people running and executing jobs on the shop floor. So these, of course, can be comprised of text and photos, videos. We even can link in other documents. So here's a setup sheet linked in from the actual CAM system. I could even have links to other part numbers with similar setups, or anything you want. It's really sort of the sky's the limit there. All right, so back here on the part, let's actually jump over and talk about how parts and work orders kind of correlate with each other. So here is a part level again with all the different routing options. If I click this tab right here where it says routings, it will actually show me the routing methods that are available to use, even kind of broken out with their descriptions on top of them. And when I create a work order, ProShop will give us the option to choose which routing method we want to send the part down. So whether we're pulling them from inventory, whether we're building them to inventory, whether it's the first time we're running a job and there's some additional steps for inspection perhaps, those options will be available to me. Let's click over and look at an actual work order. So on the part page here, on the right-hand side of the screen, we always see a complete history of all the jobs that we've ever run for this part number. I can look at recent ones, in-process ones, or all work orders that we've ever done. And I can see right here the quantities, the drawing revisions when they're due, links to the customer POs and the status, and even if those are billed to inventory work orders or not. Let's go take a look at this one right here. And so this is what a work order looks like. You can simplify the view a bit for machine operators, but we found that after going through training and kind of getting familiar with the way ProShop works, it's really helpful for employees to see actually a little bit more information than you might initially expect them to want to see. But they can start with a more simplified view. I can't show you that in the demo here, but if you'd like to learn more, I certainly can another time. So every job has the ability to have at least two different people be responsible. We have a project manager role, and we have sort of a planner role. Those people will always be alerted to things that are happening on these jobs. As soon as the jobs are initiated and finalized, they will be instantly notified about the fact that they are now responsible for these jobs, and they can come take a work on them and make sure everything is handled. Here again is those purchasing status icons we talked about earlier. So if I wanted to look at, say, the raw material, I can just click this icon. It pops open a little pop-up screen showing me a summary of what we purchased, including the material certs that we actually got from the vendor, and I can just click on, and it will open up and show me those certs. So, and I can link and open the actual purchase order to the vendor as well. But the fact that this is green is because this order status is released. So that material has been released to the shop floor, which is what triggers this icon to be green and all that. So, and I can do the same thing for my cutting tools and BOM items and outside processes. Here in the middle, we have sort of the routing table. This is kind of the job router, I guess we would say. It shows all the different steps. This is pulling directly from the part master, the part record. And we can see, of course, in this case, all these operations are completed. They are green. They have check marks next to them. And if I put my mouse over any of these boxes, it will give me a time and date stamp of the person that checked off that box and when they did it. So we have good traceability. A lot of people ask, well, how can you have a certified quality system like for ISO or AS without paper? Because people need to stamp off on things. Well, the standards are pretty clear. You don't actually have to have paper. You just have to have good traceability of who did what, how you know they're trained, and all that kind of thing. So that's all handled pretty well. We have the ability to sign off that the setups are complete, the job is ready for production, that we've done inspection, and if we click into one of these operations, then we can go look at the actual first article inspection results, for example. So here we are with the full first article of all the dimensions that we're checking. As soon as you type those values in, ProShop can instantly recognize whether they're in tolerance or not based on the nominals and the actual tolerance ranges. If they're a little bit closer to the limit, we're going to highlight that in yellow. And if they're actually out of tolerance, we're going to turn that red. And I'll jump over here to our what we call our in-process check. So here's a summary of a run that we did, and we had a few sets of records here. And here's this one over here in red. So if I mouse over that, I also get a time and date stamp of which employee did that, and if I double click on it, it is going to bring me right open and look at the nonconformance report that ProShop generated automatically when we put in that bad value. And it will record pretty much everything about the incident automatically. It knows which job we're on, the operation level, the drawing revision, the customer, their PO number, the part number, what machine that we were at, what operation it was, who the person was that caused the NCR, and then we can do dispositioning. All this data will be collected and analyzed in the background, and we have quality reporting dashboards where you can see what the #1 cause code is for scrap or NCRs over the following or the last 6 months or 9 months or year or whatever you want to look at. Really solid reporting, and having this all built right in and auto link into the various other modules, we believe is a powerful combination that just most other systems just don't have. So that's kind of a neat little function there. When you are ready to submit a first article to your customer, ProShop, for those particularly in aerospace, ProShop will understand the preferences for your clients. And if we open up this customer linked right here, and I can open that up, look at our contact module. This is basically what it looks like. At the top, we have links to basically any record related to that customer at all. Any part we've ever made, work orders, estimates, quotes, packing slips. We can even see a summary of our delivery performance for that customer and the profitability of all of their jobs, just right here from this single page. But what I pointed out just a minute ago is down here in this sort of quality reporting section, we can specify which customers require certs, certificate of conformance, first articles, and in this case, what format of first article they want. So this customer, Cicero Engineering, wants AS9102 first articles. So when I'm back here on the first article page, I can go ahead and see what that is going to look like. And we collect the data in sort of this generic format, but then we report it in an AS9102. And when we are getting down to the end of that job, where we are preparing the document package, ProShop will automatically format that document package in the AS9102 format for this customer. it will also automatically pull all the certs related to that job. So if we can jump over and just take a quick look. I do need to pick up the pace, but you know, we already saw those material certs earlier. We have some of the inspection. It's not totally done yet, but let me show you what that paperwork would look like. I open up the final inspection operation. All these checkboxes are pre-filled based on that client preference. And ProShop went and found the material certs. Is the bubble tag of the drawing, and then here is the complete AS9102 Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, multiple pages. And we can print these to paper if we want, if that's where our customer wants them, or we can save them off into a folder where ProShop will collate all the PDF files into a single document package that you can then upload into your client's portal or something of that nature. So kind of a neat function there, kind of automate that part of things. For companies particularly that do assembly work, ProShop will also collect those certs and those first articles on multi-level bills of materials. So, you know, we used to have assemblies at our shop that were maybe 100 part numbers, and when we had to prepare the document package, the paper stack was literally 1.5 inches thick of paper if you printed it. And before we released that functionality, that feature in ProShop, it would sometimes take someone all day to prepare a document package, literally 6 to 8 hours. And after releasing that feature, they could prepare document packages in 5 or 10 minutes for very complex assemblies. And it just dramatically changed the equation in our inspection department of how much throughput, how many people we needed to employ to do that work. So, all right. And then maybe importantly, well, very importantly, is job profitability. Let us, I think I'm going to actually hack this URL and go to number 39. There we go. So here's an example of a job that has been finished. I don't think the results were great, but if we check, you see this $ icon right here. Whenever a job is done in ProShop, ProShop will automatically create a profit summary, and it's only going to be visible for those employees that are allowed to see it. But that icon has now appeared. I can click on that. Sure enough, this was a pretty loser job. We lost 63% on it. If I want to drill into the details of why, those details are right here at my fingertips. I can look at all the labor that we spent on that job, who did it, what troubles they may have had. If they were running under target, those numbers are going to be red. Or I can also look at a summary of all the purchase orders we issued to all of our vendors and see what happened there as well. So, anyway, profit summaries and job costing are a super core function of ProShop, and we believe that it should be very easy, or else people aren't actually going to do it. So besides showing you the reports here, we also will push those reports and the summaries and alerts into our messaging system and onto various dashboards where they'll automatically show up for people to see the profitability of those jobs. All right, let's just touch very briefly on time tracking and scheduling. So obviously, as employees are working on those jobs and looking at their setup instructions and doing inspection, they will be tracking their time. They just do that right from here. They can click log in at any time. They can be logged into multiple jobs at once if they want to, in different percentages of their time. As they're tracking their time on jobs, that summary of how much progress they're making versus the targets will be summarized in this little graph right here that we call job progress. So we can see that individually on job by job basis by looking at the jobs, and we also have some dashboards that will display this same graph for all the jobs currently out on the shop floor. And that's a pretty common page where a shift lead or a shop manager might, production manager might be reviewing that, all day long, sort of on one of their tabs on their browser, just to see how all the jobs are going. All right, we need to kind of move on to some other topics, but before we do, one last thing on scheduling. Whenever you have a work order that gets issued, based on the work centers that are here, based on the routings that you've chosen, ProShop will automatically schedule those jobs. Our scheduling is finite capacity only, and let's go take a very quick peek at a schedule page. So I can see all my different work centers. You can group them into groups, and then I can open up any of those and see what that schedule looks like for the different operations. that will be performed on that machine kind of going out into the future. The color of these bars right here is indicating the status of the on-time status of that job. You'll notice this one is red. That's not great. That's because this job is supposed to ship. It's the little yellow bar we see right here. This job is supposed to ship on the 28th. Now it looks like we're already gonna, we're not gonna ship it until this date. I could, if I wanted to, decide to book some overtime by clicking this little box right here and book that night shift that we didn't have. And look at that. That gets a lot closer now, and that turns yellow, which means we're going to finish that job the same day it's supposed to ship. And of course, making that change automatically updated all the other jobs behind it, because these are all, in this case, forward scheduled and finite capacity. So as the job currently on the machine gets worked on, and as people are finishing their setups and making parts, that time tracking information that they're recording will be automatically feeding into the schedule and hopefully shortening this bar at the same rate that time is passing by, and we'll stay on time for when we expect to finish that job. But regardless of whether they're doing well or not, it is sort of a closed loop system. So if they have problems with that job, then the ending date will keep staying static, whereas time is passing by, and we'll now be late again on this job, and that may eventually make other jobs late. So just a very little quick bit on that. And of course, it's very easy to move jobs around between different machines or reorder them on the same machine. So, all right, let's talk about a few of the other functions in ProShop, and then we'll get into the Q&A section. So in our quality control system, this is where we can, let's talk about standards. So you can build all the standards that your company might be certified to. If we click onto one of those standards, we can see the actual text from the standard itself. And you'll notice all of these little links next to the various sentences and phrases here. ProShop has a feature we call requirement fulfillment locations. And we can create links, which will be kind of hidden down in here. I won't open them right now. But those links can be summarized right up here. And if I click, so if an auditor asks me, well, how do you meet this particular clause of the standard? We can open up those links and we can say, well, many ways, but one of those is our quality procedure 9.3 for management review. This is the person that's in charge of it. Here's all the users that have to approve it. Currently, it's not reapproved because it just expired on its annual expiration. So they will be automatically notified to go reapprove that. I can see our various scope and procedure, record control, related documents. And then here in this case, we have a flow chart of how we actually do management review. So we can review that flow chart. We can have the associated training with that. And we can associate this procedure with specific company positions as well. And if we want to dig a little deeper, we can look at, for example, our task for management review. So here's what the task looks like. This is a lower level document. These are the 3 people that are trained to do management review to a proficiency level. It's all of their duties. Cindy is the trainer, and we can even look at the training certificates by clicking these icons here. This current revision is at Rev L. If I want to look at the archive index, I can open up this little section here and look at all of the archives of different old revisions of how we used to do this task. And if I open up this requirement fulfillment references, this is sort of the corollary to those inbound links that we had from the standards module. So this is showing us that these sections of the various standards are pointing to this particular document. So I could click right on those and understand the relationship between the standards that we're trying to meet and how our quality system actually meets them. So it becomes a very relatively simple system of crossing links inbound and outbound to the various standards you're trying to meet. Let's take a look real quickly at company positions and users. So if we have a company position here, for example, I can see what the essential functions are of that role, which employees are in the company are currently in that role, whether they are active or whether they are in training. I can see what percentage they are towards being trained, what they still have left to do. So if we, for example, looked at Brian's training, and we could just click on the link here, it would actually show me sort of graphically all the items that he needs to be trained in. He's trained in the ones that are green, and he's not trained in the ones that are red. So Brian can also see this for himself, so he can go seek out the training by clicking on any of these links and seeing who the trainers are, and reading through or watching videos or whatever it is that the training comprised of. All right, let's see, I think, before we just wrap up the live part, let's just go look at our equipment module really quick and show you how we will use that for managing both facility maintenance, equipment maintenance, and calibration of our instruments and gauges. So here's an example of a machine tool. We can see the basic specs about it. I can link in things like manuals and other actual documents that we might want to attach in. I can see that this equipment is on many different schedules, from changing the batteries to cleaning air filters and the coolant tank and everything else. So really any kind of, it could be a delivery truck with its oil changes, anything at all. We have notes, we have who's responsible for this item. That can be a company position. In this case, there's 3 different people that are shop assistants, or it can be a specific person. So here example is Kelsey with his smiley face. And they are the ones, whoever's responsible for check, they are the ones that are going to get the automatic reminders and the alerts when these items come up to be due. So currently, with these 2 items being yellow, the shop assistants will be getting notifications both in their inbox and on their sort of work dashboards that they need to do the air filters and they need to clean out the suction filters as well. When they go to do that work, they can watch a video on how to do it. They can look at a manual. If there are BOM items that are going to be consumed, then we can see those BOM items. So in this case, we use these batteries, for changing the batteries. I know where they're stored. I know how many they need for that service and how many we currently have in stock. So every time we perform this service, we're just going to click this checkbox, and that will automatically decrement how many batteries we used, reset the date of when that's due again next, based on the frequency you've set. And I can also go look at a history just by clicking this little button of all the times we've performed that service in the past. So let's go take a very quick look at how we might also do that for something like a caliper. So a measuring instrument, here's some photos and some instructions of how we actually do this in-house. Here's, of course, the instructions. And if I look at the history of this one, what I really wanted to point out was when you can link in the other instruments that you use to do that calibration. So on the right-hand side here, I can see that we use various gauge block sets, check pins, rocks, temperature, and humidity in the room. And if we click on something like the gauge block set, it will take me to the record for that item. And if I look at the 2 different schedules here, including the one where we actually send it out of house, this is sort of taking it full loop here. If I look at the history of that particular item, I can open up and look at the certs that we scanned in when we had that service done out of house. So in that way, we can show an auditor NIST traceability for any instrument in our company, even if we did the calibration in-house. So the auditing process in ProShop is generally very fast, very simple, and we have customers, and we experience it ourselves, where audits take about a half to a third of the time that was scheduled. All right, let's jump back to my presentation, and we'll just kind of wrap things up, talk about some of the integrations we have. So we have some deep and some basic integrations with Mastercam, SolidWorks PDM, QuickBooks and Sage are the 2 partners we use for the accounting integration, and then HiQA and NetInspect for inspections. NetInspect is a tool that Boeing and many Tier 1s often require inspection results to be delivered to them electronically. And in ProShop, it's easier to do the inspection inside of ProShop on the shop floor, and then we can export those into NetInspect. And then our HiQA integration is one of our newest. Let's actually jump. So with our Mastercam, we have the ability to export our tools into your Mastercam program, so that comes in smoothly. But in our HiQA one is pretty neat, very impactful for a lot of companies, so I just wanted to explain that. HiQA has what we've seen as the very best balloon tagging software on the market. You can, with a single touch, balloon an entire drawing, very accurate. You can then customize those the views and the order of sequences and things like that. Once you've performed that, you can then export that plan to a ProShop CSV file. And then ProShop will be able to take that CSV, you can save a map configuration of that file and import that full inspection plan in just a minute or two. So you can have those complex inspection plans that would otherwise have to be manually entered that can be automatically generated and uploaded into ProShop really simply. So pretty cool there. Wanted to talk about some of the client results that we've seen. Actually, I'm just going to jump straight to these. So we've had customers report, increases in their sales of, 25 or 30% with the same staff, and that's because they're able to keep their spindles utilized more often for a number of reasons. Because we're keeping track of the tools, they know what they need before the job gets to the machine. They're having shorter setup times because they have better work instructions. Some of our customers have reported within 9 months of implementing ProShop, profitability increases in the company of more than 25% because they are, again, selling that machine time they weren't able to better utilize in the past. So more jobs through the same overhead and much better profit. Customers, that one I talked about at the very beginning, dramatic reductions in late orders because they can just have a much better sense of what's going on, what's happening at outside processing. They aren't running out of tools. They're able to get on top of things much more simply than they were before. One customer reported to us a 10 times reduction in the lead time from when an order gets received to when it actually hits the shop floor. In their old system, it was paper documents that would travel around the office getting signed off, and various people would work on them. In ProShop, all those people can work concurrently and at the same time to do their various roles in the company. A customer reported to us that they were able to take on much more complicated assembly work, whereas before they were really limited to component parts because they just didn't have a robust enough system to handle complex projects like this. And they're now taking on and winning complex assembly jobs, increasing their margins because those are jobs that a lot of shops can't do in their area. So those customers are now relying on them for those higher margin complex projects. We had a customer report to us that, many companies get ProShop in order to become certified for ISO or AS or some other certification because we have all the quality modules built in, it just makes the certification process that much simpler and that much easier to maintain once they become certified. But one customer told us they actually had the day of their audit, the auditor showed up and there was a widespread power outage in the area. Obviously, that wasn't good because everything is all digital. There's no paper copies, but they got smart and they were doing an on-premise server, actually. They picked up their server, unplugged it, and took it over to a hotel room at a nearby hotel with the auditor, plugged it into the big TV there, and they did most of the audit from the hotel room using ProShop on that hotel screen and passed with flying colors. So what is it like working with us, with ProShop and Adyen Systems? So we are very customer focused. That's the way we were successful with our machine shop, growing it like we did. We take that same approach to running this company now. We are very aggressive on continuously developing new features. We're releasing new major releases probably every 6 months or more with major new modules and features. When we have a customer that wants to work with us, we do a fairly careful assessment to whether that's going to be a good fit or not. It is definitely not the case that ProShop is a good fit for all companies. Some companies just can't get their head around the idea of going paperless, or maybe they're not focused enough on developing business processes. They like to wing it a little bit more. And companies that like to wing it just really aren't a good fit for us, unfortunately. Once we do figure a good fit, we go through the process of configuring their system, working with them on data migration to make that as easy and seamless as possible. We have a very robust training protocol. It starts out online and then it moves to on-site. It's very well documented. If you'd like to learn more about that, I can show you the outlines. And then ProShop is pretty easy to pick up because it's web-based, because most of the navigation is just on-screen hyperlinks. People aren't needing to memorize menus. people out on the shop floor they have relatively few pages they need to worry about, so they can easily pick those up. So we have customers that when they really want to go at it hard, we've had people pretty much implement it in 30 days. That's pretty aggressive for a smaller company, but even larger ones can definitely be turning off their old system, in as soon as 90 days. And then our support systems are great. We have 5-star ratings on Capterra for all of our reviews. In fact, we actually have sort of the highest ratings for ease of use and best value on Capterra, and on Software Advice, we are the #1 highest ranked manufacturing software out of over 70 in the category. So um, we are definitely running a little short. As I said, I probably would. If there's any questions, please go ahead and put those into the chat box. I'd love to answer anything that I didn't cover. And of course, let me throw this up here. Right at the top is a link to book a one-on-one demo. So if you'd like to see more than you saw today, you can click there. That will take you to a page where you can book a demo directly with me. Do we have training for ESL users? We do not have training for ESL users. We have had customers that have used something like for the ProShop to actually use Google Translate. So every page you see is instantly translated into whatever language. So that's an option for that. But unfortunately, we don't have any trainers that know other languages. How do we handle part serialization? Yes, ProShop absolutely has part serialization. If we go take a look at that work order, you can actually serialize parts. Let me switch back to my screen real quick. So you can serialize parts while they're being worked on. You can add serial numbers to those. Those serial numbers can be then tracked in and out of inventory. So you can serialize your parts as they go into inventory during a job, and then store them in inventory with all their serial numbers. And then as you consume them onto other projects and other assemblies, those serial numbers will be tracked out of inventory back into other jobs all the way through to shipping. Thomas asks, is there an API for custom software integration? There will be. We are working on a REST API that should be coming out early 2019, and that will give the options to integrate with more software than we do today. Shop employee hardware. Yes, tablets, iPads, computers, phones, all of those are possible. To be totally frank, our ProShop is not fully responsive for down to phones. So you can definitely use it on a phone. The experience isn't super excellent yet, but that is something we will certainly be working on in the future, is getting some of those pages you might be able to use from a phone down into more responsive pages for that. Do we have executive information system? ProShop does have lots of executive dashboards for things like sales and finance and shipping, and so yes, we definitely have a bunch of dashboards that can be used for things like that. Can you flow information into a CRM software, similar to accounting? We can exchange other data using CSV at the moment, so you can import client lists and other things from that. You could flow some things back out. We do have some basic functionality on our contact module here for keeping track of all the personnel, shipping locations, shipping requirements, packaging, lots of things like that. Scrolling down to the bottom, sort of who's the account manager, who's in charge of that customer from customer service, what industry they're in, where the sales lead came from. So we do have some functionality. We do have some longer term plans to incorporate more CRM functionality than we do already. And when our API is finished, then it should definitely allow the relatively free flow of information back and forth from CRM. Flags, like I saw flags at IMTS. So if you could elaborate on that, Scott, I think you might be talking about notifications, maybe these types of notifications where For example, yeah, so for example, when an NCR gets created, an automatic notification gets sent to certain people. So if we open up and look at this one here, there's a summary of that NCR. This can be sent automatically to different people that are configured to receive those notifications. So yeah, and there's lots of different flags. Here was some where a due date was changed. Here's some we got a customer PO from a client that doesn't have a credit app from us. Um, all sorts of sort of flags and alerts built into the messaging system. VMI. So yeah, you can absolutely vendor manage inventory, I think is what you mean, John. We definitely have ability to, keep inventory of parts. If you have, long-term contracts with your customers, you can, build those kind of schedules of internal orders to replenish that stock, and all that kind of thing. I'm definitely happy to talk to you more in detail about that. Rev changes, yep, no problem. We got that handled. When you have a rev change, which can be initiated from a new customer order that's now entered at a new revision that we've never seen before, ProShop will automatically unlink this list revision drawing. It will archive that drawing, and if I open this up, ProShop actually manages the file end of things as well. So if I drag this over, this is the folder structure for this particular part number. And under the approved prints folder, this file will automatically be removed and renamed and put into this archive folder automatically when you have a new drawing revision. So, and I can also look at, for any part here, I can look at the drawing, the history here. So if I open up this little part here, I can see this one only has one revision history, but I can see a complete history of all the drawing revisions that have been active on this part and what the starting work order was for any time we had a new revision. So I think we'd have that fairly well covered. Yeah, different levels of access and cost for different users. ProShop has 3 different types of user seats. We have A-level seats, which are our shop users, B-level seats, which are our office kind of users, people like, estimators, purchasing, planning, that type of role. And then we have an administrator type of level. And they do have different costs for subscription or purchase. And I'd be happy to, give anyone a customized quote based on how many of each of those types of users they need. One thing that is important to note is very different than many other systems. ProShop does essentially require that each employee have their own named user login. As you kind of saw through the demo, when a shop employee is working on a job, looking at the instructions, doing inspection, they are interacting with ProShop at a much deeper level than most ERP systems typically would. So those employees do need to have a user seat, even the shop people on the shop floor, which is why we have our shop seats, which are much less expensive than the other types in the office or the administrators. Any other questions left? I know we're going a few minutes over. I appreciate you sticking with me. I see some people have dropped off, but again, I can and will send a copy of this video to all of you that attended, or even if you signed up and could not attend. I see Scott is typing. I think this will probably be our last question for the day. But again, you can throw that link back up at the top again. If you want to book a one-on-one demo with me, you can go ahead and click that button up on the top. Does every shop user have a seat? You have a data collection station. So we do have, yeah, as I said just a moment ago, every shop user does have to have their own named user seat, assuming you want them to use it. If you have an area where you have 10 people doing deburring and they don't actually need to track their time, and you don't care to have them update how many parts they've deburred, then you could certainly have a lead person in that area that is doing the updating for the work that their team is performing. So it's not a requirement to have every person be a user, but if you also want to have records for them for Hi, Bill. Uh, yeah, you can. I appreciate that, you guys. That's great. Will you come run our business so we can retire? Yes. Well, we already did that once. We sold our shop, and then we wanted to get back into helping other ones. So we do really enjoy working with companies, and yeah, I hope that you have the opportunity to work with you guys. But back to your question, Scott. If you want those employees to be documented in the quality system with all their user roles and responsibilities, let me just pull this up here. Like, you can have ProShop will automatically generate an org chart, and you can see which employees are in those roles. If I even click on this little training link right here, we will display, and I can zoom in, we can display how trained those people are towards being in those roles. If you want to have that type of information for those people, then they do need to have a user seat. You can't have that. You can't have all this information about Mark Machinist, for example, without having a user seat for him. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Any more questions, again, please contact me directly. I will follow up with an email with a video recording of this session. And thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. And take care and have a wonderful day.